So welcome again to Rabbit Rabbit Reloaded, May 8th, 2022 at the Fuchs Cooperative in the Victoria Barracks in Hamburg, Germany. So today I'd like to welcome Dr. Jenna Ng, Senior Lecturer in Film and Interactive Media at the University of York in the UK. Jenna, would you like to say anything about yourself or maybe tell us what the title of our talk is today?
Pleasure. And thank you for having me, Alan. Sorry I can't be in Hamburg, but I am virtually here and spiritually in Hamburg. And it's a
Thanks
great
so
pleasure
much
to
for
be
joining
here.
us. I'm looking forward to the talk, and next time we'll have to have you here live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I am an associate professor, senior lecturer at the University of York, and I've been working on and studying and thinking about and watching Machinima for easily 10 years now. So topic very dear to my heart. I love talking about it, and I'm so happy to be here to talk about it. And our talk, this dialogue we're having today, has a long title, but it is New Truths. Because I think that we talk about this 10-year period, right? I think we need to talk about what is new, what is happening, what is the projection, the future of this. So new truths, or rethinking the virtual with Machinima, video games, art, documentary, life, everything.
Nice. So we're going to be talking about Machinima, and my knowledge of it from about 10 years ago was the last time that I really spent a lot of time with Machinima, but someone defined it as pieces of cinema that are made using 3D engines. Is that accurate? Who said that? Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a catching phrase, isn't it? Pieces of cinema, yeah. So essentially, Machinima is what that phrase says. It's videos, clips, images that are made with a software or a game engine or virtual world engine, a graphics rendering software. Who said that is a person called Anthony Bailey. So Machinima has this origin story, so many of them around it. And one of the main origin story of Machinima is that it was used to document gameplay. So video games features hugely strongly in Machinima history.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it's like walkthroughs at the beginning, right?
Yeah, walkthroughs, and then the culture took on with sort of high performance play. So and people have written about this, like Henry Lowood from Stanford has written a whole series of articles about how Machinima documents a certain era, the late 1990s, an era of high performance gameplay, competitive multiplayer game culture, and it was documenting that. And one of those documentations was Quake done quick. So Quake is also a large part of Machinima's history, and Anthony Bailey was one of those very involved in Quake done quick. You can say that 10 times very quickly. Quake done quick, which is obviously a speeded up run through the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's done quick, And again, it's to show skill, it's to show dexterity, it's to show, it's a particular kind of performance that was in the game culture then. And he came up with that phrase.
And so these were Quake done quick? Were they actually played quickly, or did they just speed up their gameplay?
They played it quickly, yeah. So the whole point is to show skill, which was the really starting point of Machinima. But it was wrapped up with that kind of gaming culture in that era, and with video games, because video game software, the engine at the time, was unprecedentedly sophisticated. And that's also, if I could continue this point as well, I mean, that's also, I think, what's the most fascinating part of Machinima for me. It's this subversion that's inherent in this. It's a game, right? You buy a game, you play the game, and then you put it aside and you buy another game. That's kind of it was the commodity.
Right.
But these gamers looked at it, and when the graphics are wow, we love the world, we love being in this world, and they started to be very creative about it. One of which being to make films about what they do in this world and how they are in this world, right? So a game became a filmmaking medium, right? So that subversion, it wasn't meant to be making films. It was meant to be played, and then you buy another one.
Right, but
Yeah.
then in the late 90s, I think it was also in the late 90s when some of the game makers decided to change their game engines that would allow to do these kind of things, right?
Yeah, so that came a little bit later.
Okay.
Because the game companies realized. So at first they weren't too thrilled about this because technically it is a copyright. You know, you're using the assets of the game, which is copyrighted and so on, right, to make your own creative work. And when people do that, the companies tend not to be very happy when, but they realize that there is a much greater, bigger, and more exciting momentum to this because when you make creative work that resonates, that carries through, that gets brought out to the world, and non-gamers, more people started to become aware of the game, not because they are gamers, they don't play, but because this is media, this is creativity, this is culture that is very contemporary, right? This is digitally made culture and cultural products. So they realized, this is actually good for us. and that was when they started facilitating machinima and disseminating it that way.
So the beginning, it sounds like it was. I mean, we're talking about the late 90s, but also maybe up until 2011, when Rapid Rabbit was. That it was more like, was it more gamers making creative productions, or had it already?
Yeah. So by 2000 and the mid 2000s, it was starting to be a bit broader in scale and scope. So it started to move out beyond gaming. So virtual worlds, so users of virtual worlds like Second Life, which was very, very popular in its heyday, started to also making films with the engine, with the visuals of Second Life. And that's also created its own genres because it wasn't about the game anymore, but it was about just creating fantastic, radically different visuals, making different kinds of work. Yeah. So that was also a key expansion or a slight change from the gaming origins of machinima to this wider use of other kinds of engines. I should note here, the Shanghai World Expo, this is in 2010, right? So we're still talking about, featured the Madrid Pavilion of the Shanghai World Expo in 2010 featured Second Life machinima. And just really beautiful, wonderful works of assets that have been changed and repurposed and built in Second Life with the Second Life engine to make these really incredible, slightly spooky, really out of this world works.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know that. That was right before 2011. I don't know, but I was wondering if maybe we should go a little bit back to, like, I don't know, if you could call him the inventor of machinima, Michael Bernie Burns.
Yeah.
And get into some. Maybe we should show an example to him because I feel like we've gotten to a lot of talking about it, but we haven't shown anything yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say a little bit about Bernie Burns to lead to an example we can show. So he wasn't quite the inventor. He was involved in the production company that became Rooster Teeth, but he was involved in making probably the most successful, or if not one of the most successful machinima series. It's called Red versus Blue, and it was. I mean, in the end, it ran to like 18 seasons. They had DVDs and T-shirts. It's in popular culture. I mean, Red versus Blue. We know what. And it's set in Halo, so it's a sort of AAA, game Halo from Microsoft, and Halo, the whole point of Red versus Blue and why it's so ingenious was because it referenced the game in so many ways and in really ingenious ways, because that was Machinima of that era. It is about the virtual being, the virtual gaming, and the virtual life in this game world, in Halo. And Halo is about people or characters like fighting each other, right? so Red versus Blue in itself already references that. Let alone, yeah. All the other ways in which they reference the game. So it's really smart, really ingenious. It was incredibly popular, and and their first episode is called "Why Are We Here," which we can show now.
Should I go ahead and play that?
Yeah, let's
All right.
do that. So classic example.
This is a classic example, and I have to jump to it because. Stefan, we're doing video now. Okay. So. It's playing still. Wait a second.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really like that. I mean, there have been other versions on the web of that episode, but I always play that one because it still has that, the crosshairs of the weapon.
Yeah.
Because subsequently it was removed. So Microsoft endorsed this so much, they made this control where you can lower your weapon, which in a game where you just sort of shoot you don't do that. But because you can lower, then your crosshair disappears, right? So the image, and that is really to facilitate.
And your character also lowers his, like you don't see his weapon anymore, or is it just the crosshairs? Okay.
Because the character lowers the weapon, the little circle in the middle
exactly
disappears. Yeah, but this version that we just played still has that, because that was the original. That was how they made it. They just controlled their avatar in the game, performed the script, made this film, basically, right?
Yeah, it's amazing also just what it developed into, like you said, 18 seasons and...
over many years as well, so very enduring.
Company.
It was a very enduring season. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Netflix, or, it's widely available as well. So there is it is way beyond the gamers. It's gone beyond the gaming culture, And then this is sort of, people have written about it, this sort of Brechtian, it's been compared to, to Brecht, this self-reflexive, self-critical attitude that they've taken in this Machinima has been compared to wider literary and cultural references as well. So the resonance of this, which really came out because this bunch of guys were really Halo fans. And that's that kind of subversion, which I think is just so fascinating. Machinima.
Yeah, I mean, it's often that humans invent technologies, then we find out later that other people have found really other interesting ways of using them. I think the same is with video games and Machinima, for sure. And how do you, how has it influenced other media? Do you have any thoughts on that? I told you I wouldn't bring any surprise questions.
No, surprise away. And actually we welcome questions. I'll leave this to you, but we welcome questions and comments from the audience as well if they want to type something in the chat.
You can also write them in German if you don't want to write them in English. We'll do a translation. There are at least 3 people here who can translate from German to English.
I told you, I'm in good hands. I know, but when you and I, Allan, when we started talking about this and thinking about this now and then, what's changed? I mean, 10 years, frankly, in media time on the web, it's a long time. Yeah, so you're right. How is it affecting other kinds of media, and how is machinima itself evolving and changing is very interesting. I so these are my thoughts,
Yeah.
and we can talk about this. So what I think is that there is a wider statement, there's a wider phenomenon that's happening with how we're thinking about virtual and actual being. So machinima being so much of virtual life, it was about how we are, how we act, how we behave, how we exist in these virtual worlds, in these gaming worlds, right? How we game, how we fight, how we are, how we behave. When the machine was so much about that kind of virtuality, that condition, I think, is what is changing and evolving in terms of our wider mediascape today. So our wider mediascape today, I think, is speaking of a more fluid, more complex, more intertwined levels of the virtual and the actual.
Right,
Um,
because 10 years
yeah,
ago it was,
it was a
it was
lot
just,
more
that sort of
separate.
edge cases, and
Yeah,
then, you would see stories of
yeah,
people, and then Google Glass came along and
yeah,
then
yeah,
disappeared, and but all
yeah.
this time Machinima has kept going, and
Mm,
it's it sounds like
mm,
it's become a way to comment on
yeah.
the progress, or maybe that's too positive of a word.
Yeah, and that's my sense and my take on machinima today. Yeah, you're right. So 10 years ago, and or even the early 2000s, it was quite a bit more distinct. I mean, if you think back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, right? Remember the dial-up? We have to
Yes.
dial up to the internet, and then you have to go through this whole process, and then your modem will make all these noises, right?
Hmm.
um, and now really, 4G, 5G is all around us. Augmented reality, all of that is all around us,
Yeah.
right? So that, and then there are other ways as well. Um, if we think about holographic projections, for example, holograms,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
um, we have, this was 2012, I think, we can sort of resurrect sort of dead artists, Tupac,
Amazing.
and so on at Coachella. Yeah, so you have Tupac who's duetting with Snoop Dogg, who is alive, and of course, and Tupac is obviously a rapper who died tragically, very, very young, when
Yeah.
he was basically shot. um,
Right.
yeah, and he's projected that on the stage with Snoop Dogg. So the kind of intertwining, right? The kind of combinations of the actual and the virtual is very much a statement of our contemporary mediascape.
Yeah.
And I think machinery is a part of that. Mm.
Yeah. And speaking of that, of the virtual, I don't know if I'm skipping over everything we were. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I thought it was interesting because you started talking about resurrecting, or but
Mm.
but you also told me about another event where they're not resurrecting people, but it's also a holographic projection. Uh, do you want to say anything about
Yeah,
that?
no, I'm happy to. Um, yeah, yeah. I'm happy because I've been thinking about this a lot because it is the subject of my latest book. If I can just
Oh yeah, plug the book,
plug my
please.
latest book.
Show
um,
us a screenshot of your book, please.
um, yeah. Can I share my screen
Yeah,
here? Would that would that
exactly.
appear on
Then
the would that appear on the on the on the stream?
stream, it will.
Oh,
Right now,
okay. All right.
I can see over there you're
So
on the stream, and now your book
I
is
can, yeah.
in
So
6 seconds. It's on the stream.
that's my is all right. As long as that's my latest book, which was out late last year. The great thing, and this I really want to say, is that it's actually now downloadable for free. Um, the whole book is basically available for free because of open access. So you can just search it on uh, the this link here, or just search the post screen open access, and you should, yeah. But what I'm calling the post screen and what I'm considering in terms of the post screen is exactly this idea that we have this almost like an ambient, projected, encompassing, some enveloping virtuality around us, which we see in through so many ways. Like I mentioned, I'll stop the share now because I think I'm going to stop plugging my book. which we mentioned Tupac, but also in so many other ways. VR, for example, the metaverse, coming from Zuckerberg soon, right? As well as other examples. Light projections as well, so that the memorialization of the World Trade Center with these blocks of light, where it stands in as presence, right? It stands in as the building. It's really just a block of light, though. I mean, it is immaterial, but it stands as material. So the immaterial, the material, the actual, the virtual, the second and first orders of reality, we're seeing so much of that kind of complexity and flux now, I think, in our mediascape. And to me, Machinima is starting to speak to that as well. Being something that has always been about virtuality is now also being about the actual actuality.
Yeah, exactly. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I
So you mentioned the event. I should So I'm as continuation of the work from my book, I'm also looking into this new state of the virtual, and there's a concert by ABBA coming, and ABBA is like famous and popular through the whole. So they are staging a concert series starting later this month, 28th of May. I think they're starting that series, and it would be. Can I share my screen again? Is it very difficult when I share my screen, or no?
It's wonderful.
Okay. No.
It
it doesn't seem to. So this is the ABBA hologram concert. There's a trailer here, but it's really about the four of them, right? And they're just going to be holograms. So the whole concert. So there is at least one concert every day, 7 days a week. There's probably more because they're matinees as well. So it's not 8 to 9 concerts a week, every week, from May to at least December. That's about 6 months. And they're just, and it's incredible, but they can do that because like holograms don't get tired, right?
Right, they could just put it on a loop, on an infinite
exactly,
loop,
exactly. But they're calling it a concert. They're calling it just remove that. They're calling it a live show. It's a live show that really subverts everything we can think about in terms of performers, liveness, presence. There isn't kind of anyone there, really. I mean, there are other musicians, but these four, right? They're not there. They're just, it's a light show.
They're beamed in.
Yeah, exactly. But they're like, they're practically sold out. People are accepting this virtuality as the present, as the actual, reality, as being. Yeah. Because why else would you wouldn't spend so much money? You wouldn't have this kind of popularity for a light show, right? But you would for virtual ABBA. So there is a kind of a shift, I think, in mindset and mentality there in terms of what we're accepting as reality.
So 10 years ago, ABBA couldn't have put on a hologram show, you don't think?
No, I don't think they would, and not just because the technology is a very old one. It's really Pepper's Ghost projections, which we can talk about maybe later. But it's basically a light illusions with mirrors, reflecting light of mirrors, from unseen parts of the stage, so that what you're really seeing is a reflection as the ghosts. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was really back, I mean, Pepper's Go, this was back in the 19th century, really. It's a Victorian era technology. Of course, it's been perfected now
Sure.
with better lights and better staging and so on. Tupac was Pepper's Go's projection, effectively. Yeah. So the technology is old, but it got better.
It's
But
magic, actually.
but it's the mindset. I think people would not have. I mean, you would think, well, this isn't real. Whereas
Yeah.
now we know it's not real, but there is a certain more complex slippage, I think, in that kind of acceptance of
I,
what is real and what isn't.
I think I'm still so skeptical
Mm.
that, I mean, I feel like everybody who bought a ticket to that show is so gullible, except present company excluded.
I was gonna say I have a ticket. I'm going.
but
Yeah.
the people who are going there in their head thinking it's a live show somehow.
I don't think. I mean, we all we did. No, people don't think they know it's not going to be ever, but they're accepting that there is some.
That's a replacement. And it's
You
good
see,
enough,
yeah,
or
exactly.
it's still going to be a great event, even though they just need one person to hit play at the beginning and then at the end it stop or whatever.
Yeah. 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 So I'm going to really to see what is what it looks like, what it's about. I'm also, yeah. I mean, I'm hugely interested as a phenomenon. I'm also a bit of an ABBA fan, but I'm also hugely interested in the phenomenon. Yeah. And as I said, I think there is something a little bit more going on there between what we are accepting and embracing, even as the real, right? And the real doesn't mean that it must be physical. Like phantom limbs.
Right.
Sometimes you feel that this, if you don't have a limb, but you kind of feel it's still there, right?
Yeah.
It is real because you feel your leg itching, and you feel your leg there, right? So these ideas of the real are starting to permeate more widely across our media and what we have as media.
Yeah, I mean,
So Machinima is part of that.
right. I guess when you talk about when you're playing games, when you're playing a game or something, you talk about the character as yourself, like your avatar in the video game. You don't say, "Oh, you shot my character who's standing in for me." You say, "You shot me," or
Yeah.
I would imagine if it gets more detailed, like, "Oh, you stepped on my foot." It's not my avatar's foot, or
Yeah.
so. What other kinds of ways is Machinima commenting on this kind of thing? Do you think?
Yeah, so what I've been noticing, so maybe actually I've also mentioned this earlier. So I'm also a juror on the Milan Machinima Festival. I've been doing it for 3 years now. So what I've been noticing of the entries into the festival, so there are a lot that still reference the game, reference the virtual world, but the increasing number of entries now, and those I find immensely interesting. These entries which also bring in the actual into the virtual. So again, it becomes sort of this statement that is kind of both worlds, but also of a new kind of reality. It's one where we can accept the virtual as the actual. We can accept actual politics, actual culture, actual being in the virtual. So a very good example of this, which I think we would like to show, is a work that I love, is called Operation Jane Walk. So this is a machinima that was made by Leonhard Müller, I think it's pronounced. And yeah, so he made this in a game called Tom Clancy's The Division, and the game is set in Manhattan. So the game designers, designed a very realistic looking Manhattan. It's got all the buildings, it's got all the landmarks, it's got all the streets and street names and so on. And what the creator, what the artist, what the filmmaker did was he occupied an avatar in this game with 3 or 4 others also occupy, so they're there as the game, right? They have their weapons and the dress as the character in the game, but they're not playing the game. He's leading them on a pacifist walk. It's a city tour, and we will show a clip in the beginning where he tells them, "Hello, you are here to do a city tour with me, and this is how you move around," and so on. Yeah, so already in that he subverts, he twists the idea of being in this virtual world. Normally, you go into this game and start shooting at other people. Sounds very familiar, but he's not doing that, right?
Should I just play
And then let's play the beginning.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Heart of a great nation.
Welcome to Operation Jane Walk, a city tour through the architecture of an online shooter game by Robin Klingel and Leonhard Muller. I'm your guide through the city, Jacob Bannigan. Take a look around us. The weather's looking pretty good for our tour today. Light snowfall, good visibility. Everyone here is in their host body, which will carry them through New York. I'm the one wearing the red jacket, so just follow me. As we begin, a short introduction into controls. To move the body, standard W, A, S, and D, and your mouse position changes the camera position. Just click around and get used to that.
Yeah.
That was the controls.
Yeah, exactly. So that was how it kind of started. But here, already there, he's already saying we're not in this game. This machine is going to be different. We're not about the game. We're in the game, and we're in the game. We're in the city. We're in this space, but we're not in the game, because how we are in the game is the politics of late 2010s America, and Trumpian America, basically, and the politics of that, and the problems, and the economic, social issues, and that is the commentary of this machinima. So it's using the virtual space of this game as a site for actual politics, actual commentary.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a history lesson and a political commentary.
Yeah, in a space that is indubitably virtual. It is an absolute. I mean, this is Tom Clancy's the Division, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you play it, you recognize the space, but then you also see it anew. You re-recognize it as a different space, because all the problems that this machinima talks about happens in the actual city, that he now tells the stories in this virtual city.
Yeah.
So maybe we can, because this second clip kind of gives a clearer idea of what this walk is about.
Yeah.
Should we play that?
Clear not. Okay, as we climb up here, we're going to admire the NM building. Today it's called MetLife Building, built in the 60s. It's a monument to the triumph of capitalism in the New World after World War II. NM, of course, greatly profited from the Second World War, not just passenger aviation, but military aviation. All corporation headquarters we've seen on our tour profited greatly from World War II. The rise of the U.S. synchronized with the rise of capitalism and with the victory over the Axis powers. This mighty complex of economies. Here's the work with this story. Responsible for its overseeing, commissioned it, multiple projects. Let's leave this saw economic growth, the 1970s, oil crisis. Through globalization, production sites move out of the cities and we see the deindustrialization of Manhattan.
Okay. I had a surprise video for you there, and I didn't want it to show it to you yet.
Yeah, but I think we got a fair idea of what was going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what was key there as well was that they were being shot at, right? while they were, you know, doing their thing, while they were conducting this art tour, so to speak. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so the game world, right, that level of virtual reality is still continuing, even as he was subverting it by walking through the city with his friends.
Right, because it's an online MMORPG.
Exactly.
So it doesn't, you can't like
Yeah.
reprogram it to
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's really
Exactly.
exciting. In the middle of a war,
Yeah.
you're going through the city and talking about the war machines that,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Which are happening in actual right? Actual politics, and yeah. And yeah, so 2010 Machinima would have been about the virtual fighting and gaming, right, in this space. So
Right.
2020 Machinima is that no, we're going to talk about, we're going to use this as a site for actual stories, actual politics, actual commentary, stories, commentary, and politics about the actual world in this virtual space. So it subverts again into another kind of storytelling, into another medium for stories,
Yeah,
and it's clever. And sorry.
that's really great to hear because with Machinima at its state in 2011, it felt like it was going into this sitcom era of Machinima,
Yeah.
and it's great to see that there's some more
New life.
progressive things going on. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. There was a little bit of a dip. And that was also when I kind of stopped and started doing other things, like virtual being, virtual thinking. Yeah. Yeah, you're right that there was a lot of sitcom-y, episodic, yeah, and a lot of, how do I put it? Cinema, like a lot of works that I saw just basically set in the game world, and then they create a new story, which was really good in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
But yeah, 10, 15 years on, it's like, another, yeah. How is this different from computer or digital animation, right? So, yeah. I was wondering whether we should show Diary of a Camper here as well, because we missed that earlier.
Sure, exactly. We would backtrack a little bit and show some origins.
Yeah. So that, I mean, because that was a little film, a little story set in the gaming world of Quake, but that was in 1995, 1996. And at that time, it was refreshing and it was original. It was insanely innovative, because cool. Yeah, because I'll leave you to yeah, because Quake is a first-person shooter, so you are never supposed to get the kind of camera angles and perspectives which this film will show, right? So what they did, the Rangers, which is the group who made this film, they hacked the game. So another level, another kind of subversion in that they hacked the game so that the camera would show like a third-person perspective, overhead cameras and so on.
And before you only saw out of the eyes of the character.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, and then they made a little narrative out of it. The story is really simple. Basically, two of their guys went in there to check out something. They got killed by the camper, who is someone who lies in ambush, and then the other, rangers went back in and shot the camper as revenge. That's it. Right. That's the story. But for 1990s, to subvert the game, which was a first-person shooter, you just shoot your way through the, to do that was radical. So this is what they always call the, arriving, the arrival of the train at Lyotard for cinema. The Lumiere brothers film for cinema. This is the equivalent for Machinima. Let's take a look.
I just have the volume down. The important, there's a dialogue goes
On the-
on at the top of the
Yeah.
screen for those who are watching. So 6 seconds left. Figures. That's pretty much the end. So,
Yeah.
who was that? Who did they find?
Oh yeah, so it's kind of like an inside joke, which they found John Romero, who is the guy at ID Game, who was involved in making Quake, and has like allegedly you know, a very bad temper, and so it's kind of like their revenge in a way as well. Yeah, but again, it's gaming references, right? It's references to the world, the meta world. So
Right.
as the origins of Machinima, you can see the role of the video game in there. But as said, if you just have a quick look at what in your own time, have a quick look at what Quake looks like, it does not look like that at all. Yeah, so there was that subversion, and in the 1990s, making that was just wildly original. 20 years on, I see a lot of Machinima, which is just a film set in the world, and it's like, we've done that many times already. So what to me is refreshing is using Machinima to make the kind of comments about the actual, because on a wider scale, there is this much more complex intertwining going on.
And so more of that is going on now. But do you see a future? Like, let's put it this way. So back in 2011, we kind of we were in the game to game style film area, and then since then we've come to more of a film. Even in the film language, we were also talking about that. The film language is pretty much the same in the Machinima films as films. So what can we do? What can we do differently? Or what's beyond film for Machinima?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and one that was asked quite a lot in the mid-teens, in the teens, really. And yeah, it's difficult, right? It's very easy to say we want something new, sure, something new, but it is hard to push that envelope. Having said that, that's what creators do, that's what artists do, right? That's what people do when we want to say something, and make our statements, and to say something about our world, right? Yeah, but you're right. What is striking, and this has been commented before by others as well, so it's not just me. I'm not the is that the language of Machinima. Here is a medium where you have a software that essentially generates the visuals for you. You don't need to build a set. You don't need to get stunts people in. You don't need to create explosions. You can just get the engine to make one for you, right? where technically anything visually is possible, we are still falling back. When I say we, the state of machinima, then aesthetically speaking, was still falling back to very conventional visual language, meaning cinema, right? But cinema language was already pretty much set 1910s, 1920s, continuity editing. We got that with Porter in the early 1900s and the early 1900s. That's right. Yeah. Shot, reverse shot, all the conventions of cinema language is still appearing in this relatively new media form today. So we feel like we just start watching like films, like cinema that's just made on the game engine. So so there were a lot of comments on like what's up with that, and how can we make it differently. Peter Greenaway was quite an advocate of this. So that's the Dutch filmmaker. So he was the judge of one of the Australian machinima festivals, and he should know. I mean, he's a filmmaker, right? And he said, why are we? Can we not do away with the frame? Can we not do away with cinema language? Can we not just have a new visual language that says things differently and comments differently? And he was saying, I want to see that. And I can see where he's coming from, but it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, of course, the physics in the world are usually based on our physics. The visuals are based on our world, even if it's maybe a different time or a different place. But coming up with new things may be difficult if our metaverse is just a copy of our world.
Yeah.
But maybe that would be like the next step is in these virtual worlds that we start to experience other reality possibilities in reality that we.
Yeah, and obviously, human creativity can never be underestimated, right? So I'm sure there will be something afoot and something happening. It's just a matter of perhaps when and how, under what circumstances would we have this flower, right?
Right.
And that's hard to say. But again, so there's a lot of talk about the metaverse and how it's going to be us all sucked into Facebook's world and so on and so on. And that's probably true. But also I think, and this is something I'm really exploring and thinking with the state of virtuality that we're in. I think that these conditions of the virtual do give us new possibilities, not just, we can now meet in the metaverse, but new languages and new conditions of expression about who we are and how we are. So
and maybe a great place to explore them, because they're things that we don't have any experience with yet that are coming, like transhumanism. And we talked a little about surviving after death and that kind of thing. Like what kind of things can we say about it before it's just suddenly here and we're like, oh, we can upload ourselves into Facebook's computers. Oh, great, yeah. What, you're not doing it? It's cool.
Yeah. And every media form, in history comes with those doubts and those questions and those ways of not validating, photography went through that, cinema went through that, right? These were regarded as the mechanical reproduction arts and were not worthy, they can't possibly say anything worthy because there's no human artistic, whatever, genius thing, intervention. You press a button. How can you make art? How can you say anything worthy when you're just pressing a button? And that was a discourse for a very long time about these media, until we realized that we were asking the wrong questions. The question really isn't, is photography art? And then, you can say, yes, it is, because blah, blah, blah. No, it isn't, because you just press a button, and so on. So, I mean, the discourse really changed when we started asking different questions, which is, what is art, right? And once we started rethinking what is art, then we started having a more productive discourse about our visual culture, about films and photography and our visual media. Then, so I think it's the same here as well. I think
So do we need to redefine art in order to appreciate machinima?
I don't know. I think it's always good to ask questions again, and just to rethink them, which is why it's also in our title, rethinking. Yeah, yeah. But what certainly I think ahead is new ways of thinking about how we are and of our being and of our conditions of being. And I think that should be exciting, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah.
We should ask all the hard questions, but we should not be afraid of the answers, and not be afraid of asking questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Do we have any comments from the?
Has anybody written any questions in our chat room? We'd be happy to answer anything. German, English. How many other languages do we have here? Italian, Turkish, and Chinese. Any of those languages, we're happy to answer your questions. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about. So many things that we already have talked about that we didn't talk about today. But it was never about trying to cover everything. It's more about having a conversation about these things. And we also said that if it's just a conversation between the two of us, that's fine. But we still welcome any questions. And there's something I discovered. I'm just gonna talk for a minute. Maybe somebody's typing a question now. But I discovered when I was looking at Franziska, who did her lecture in 2011 on Machinima, we invited to Hamburg. She had a film, and I just rediscovered that I had some old Machinima that she sent me. And there's a film called 9, and I want to just play a little bit of it because it's not like any and I'm assuming, let me disclaimer, I'm assuming that it's Machinima in some way, but I can neither confirm or deny that unless Franziska's watching now and she wants to comment. But I'm going to play it and see if it makes,
Absolutely.
in a sense. Let me jump to, it's called 9. And so I'm not going to play all 3 minutes of it, but I'm going to jump ahead to a couple places. Jump to the credits, just so we give the correct people their credit. Even though I don't know. I mean, it's possible that this is this really is just 3D graphics. But does anything in that make you think that might have been an altered game engine?
Yeah, it could have been Unreal or one of those engines, but heavily modified. So that's also done. You can use the engine to generate the visuals and then add your own modifications, animations, coloring, and so on. So it looks like one of those kinds of work.
So maybe a mishmash.
It's very
of
abstract.
things. Exactly. That's
And-
what I. That's why I thought of it, because we talked about the future. We talked about going beyond these narrative stories, and I'm sure you could, even if that isn't Machinima, I'm sure that you could make Machinima like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in, as I said, seeing a new not, I won't say language, but yeah, seeing a new visual, and understanding story in a different way. So I didn't get the volume in that. Sorry, so I don't know
I'm
whether.
sorry, it was
Yeah.
very
No,
quiet.
I think it's just me, my setup. But
It's probably
yeah, as I said,
going
I
to get us
like
cut.
the visuals. I like the visuals. I like the way that it was, that it was, well, visualizing. I watched the whole thing to see if, yeah. But as I said, I'm also interested in how story emerges differently from action, from events, from the 3 act structure, from the hero's journey, hero-heroine's journey, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
And how we can understand meaning as well across different parameters, across different visuals, across different, audiovisual cues.
Right.
So what you have just shown is,
It's
could
kind
very
of
well be a part of that. Yeah. I think we need to,
mesmerizing.
look at all of this and think about it differently, right? Just because it doesn't have dialogue doesn't mean that it's not a story, or doesn't mean it doesn't, it's about understanding its meaning, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it definitely this piece has a kind of meaning in the story, or meaning. It might just be the motion that suggests it, but there are many productions dance productions or things where they attempt to bring a story into their production, but it's really just a collection of songs or something. And it kind of reminds me of that. Like, there's a difference between cutting little bits and pieces of a game together and saying, okay, we have this flowing thing, whether it's this visual, abstract visual thing, or whether it's something that takes place in gameplay as we recognize it. I think it's interesting to see what other kinds of forms can come out of that.
Yeah, and I think that if anything should be the takeaway of all this, just there is a lot to look forward to. I think there's a lot to explore. There's a lot to extract and develop from here.
Yeah.
It's an exciting future. Metaverse and everything. It's an exciting future, and many ways, and more diverse ways than ever, to say things.
Yeah.
to make comments, to talk about our worlds. Yeah.
Things that really need to be said.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's I mean, you and I talked about this. It's the artists who say this first.
Exactly.
Yeah. The politicians say it last, but the artists say it first.
So listen to the artist, everybody. Please.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that was a pretty decent sort of summary. Is there are there any other summarizing words you'd like to say?
I don't know about summary. I mean, we kind of arranged a great deal of things,
Right.
but I think
conclusion,
conclusion, a takeaway. I think.
Yeah.
I was
That's better. A takeaway. We're not concluding anything.
And a pointer, I think, to see how we can take this forward, to see what can be generated ahead of this. And I think it is to grasp the medium, be creative.
Be creative.
And
That's good.
I don't know whether be alive always to possibilities. And we need more than ever more diverse stories and voices. And statements. And
definitely check out the for those who are watching, check out the Milan Machinima festival page. There's a lot of interesting content on there, commentaries and stories, and super interesting. I'm really happy that I was opened up to this world again of Machinima. Thanks a lot, Jenna, for coming today. It was a great talk.
Pleasure to talk about this.
Awesome.
I can say a lot, but it's and pleasure to have this dialogue as well, and just to exchange thoughts. Conversation, dialogue is very important.
Yes.
Too, and I really value this greatly. Thank you for the opportunity.
Me too. Thanks. I'm going to plug your book one more time, called "The Post-Screen Through Virtual Reality: Holograms and Light Projections," and subtitle, "Where Screen Boundaries Lie." And I wanted to ask you, is that lie like as an untruth, or like flat, horizontal?
Oh, well done. Sorry, and I'm so happy you brought this up, because it is both. It's a deliberate ambiguity on that. Yeah. So it is both in terms where these boundaries are established, because, as I said previously, the distinctions were clear, right? The actual, the virtual. We were relatively clear and distinct where the boundaries were, and now they're not. Which is the book's central argument. So lie in the sense that how we set these boundaries are now also changing, but also lie in the sense that because we don't have these boundaries anymore, that slippage between the truth and fiction, between facts and lies, are also getting more complex.
That's really fascinating.
And that's also linked to current political, conditions of misinformation, disinformation, deepfakes, yeah, absolutely, and so on. Yeah. So there are promises and there are perils, but yeah, it is the intertwining, I think, that is key to how we should see our world today.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so,
I'm looking forward to downloading it and reading it.
It's free.
I'll put the link in the description as well.
Thank you very much.
For the YouTube viewers later on, and I want to say thank you again also to Stefan, to Stefano, and to Mehmet for being our tech support today. And thanks, Jenna, again.
Yeah.
This was my first stream since 2001.
See, we're rethinking a lot of things today. Yeah.
So 10 years before it went horribly, but because it just didn't work technically. In 2001, around then, it was from Amsterdam to Kassel in Germany, and it was horrible. So everybody, we have it so good today that we can talk to somebody in New York with almost no delay, and it worked fantastically. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, and yes, thank you to your team as well for making all of this work so beautifully. My pleasure, absolutely. So thank you again. All right, keep in touch, and everybody take care and keep well.
Yes, definitely.
Bye then.
And cut.